Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 129th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. I'm Milan Starcic with Co-Host Trish S. Trish, as it's your first time here on the podcast, would you please tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Milan, and thank you very much for having me on your recovery podcast. I just think it's a wonderful venue for recovery, which I think is just really important for a lot of people today to have a resource like this. So I just wanted to thank you for offering up this kind of platform. As you said, my name's Trish. I've been in recovery for many years. I actually counsel and specialize in this field. And, I come from a long history and a family of those struggling with addiction. And sadly, they're not with us anymore. And I made the choice many years ago to basically find myself underneath all of that. And I chose a different path of living, and basically took the spirit out of my hand and put it in my heart. And that's made all the difference today.
I love that. And so I ask one question the first time everybody comes on, because to newcomers in that, it's important to see that that the sort of pivotal moment of things is different in everyone. So the question I ask is, what was the pivotal moment that the program sparked a recovery fire in your heart? And it went from, like I have to kind of I love to. Because I definitely see that recovery fire inside you. And I saw it the first time I met you. So
That's a really, really good question. And I would say that, in the promises that we often read at meetings in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a line that says sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And for me, I was really ready. And I think that those that are really ready, to actually make a change and work this program, that change can happen quite quickly. It's all about willingness, right? We are the beginning, middle, and end of all of our problems. As you know, when I introduce myself at a meeting, I always say I'm an alcoholic. My problem's Trish, and that's what the program of recovery has taught me. And you guys in the rooms is that my problem is always me. And that actually is a relief because it makes change easy. So I don't have to control him, her, this, or that anymore. The only change I need to make is myself, right? And within myself. And that's manageable. That's something I can do. I have power there. So when I first began this program, our program tells us where we're powerless, but also where we're powerful. And that's really important to understand. So your question was about when did that really spark a fire in me? It did really early on, but I had to get over myself, and I stood in my way a lot, unbeknownst to me. And that's part of our topic today, is about the delusion of self, right? Thinking we know what we know when we don't, right? I think one of the most important things that we can learn in this life is not so much what we know, but to know what we don't know.
I love that. And so then that leads us right into today's topic, is honesty and how we delude ourselves. Can you share what that means to you, Trish, and why you were happy to come and discuss that topic here today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Milan, for that question, because I think that's really the deep dive, isn't it? In how it works when we look at the program of recovery through Alcoholics Anonymous and how it works, it talks very, very specifically about honesty, right? Um, and about those that are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And I think the delusion that we also hear about all through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the delusion of self, is this sort of trickery in the mind. We play a lot of games when it comes to justification and all of that stuff, but really, it's a matter of deluding ourselves. And here's the good news about that, because I've learned that at the bottom of all that, underneath it all, is actually man's need to be good. And why do I say that? Because whenever we're deluding ourselves, whenever we're dishonest, whenever we're in denial, all of that is always an attempt to be good, to look good, to appear good, to make good, right? That's the whole purpose of it. So it does tell me that, man is basically good. And that leads me back to that notion of a power greater than ourselves, which we talk a lot about, and why it's so important. To me, God is good minus an O. Okay. So it's good minus an O. And it's about giving good life to good life. Like, to me, there's nowhere God isn't. Just look outside. Um, and all good life demands to be given good life. And then the real question is, well, how do we do that? And what are the ways that we delude ourselves from that? And I would say that, you know, um, an ancient way of describing that is, well, how do we delude ourselves with the sins of the flesh, right? I mean, you know, uh, whether it's whether it's gluttony, whether it's the use of substances, whether it's passionate addictions, whether it's whatever, right? These are the ways that we try to get out of ourselves. And once we learn this program, like for me, this program took longer than it needed to and was harder than I made it, right? It's actually quite simple. So it's a simple program for very complicated people who, I think, at the root of it all, just have sort of this God-shaped hole in their soul and this need to sort of fit in, be good, and be comfortable in their own skin. I wasn't. Um, and then thinking that somehow there's some kind of mystery magical thing because evidently there's something wrong with me, when really it's just that simple. It's just that simple when you practice these principles in all your affairs and let go of the notion of anything else and stand naked before, your maker and yourself. And I mean that, in a metaphorical sense, like just really to come clean, right? Of all of those things inside, you actually are relieved and this whole other thing happens. But the fear of doing that, because we all have, I think, a lot of experiences and ideas that, should I reveal that depth of honesty and that depth of authenticity, surely that will be used as ammunition against me. Like, there is no safe place for me to do that, right? The world is an unfriendly, unsafe place. And I couldn't take that chance to do that. Yet the opposite is true, because the truth is, when you start revealing yourself, it's like, if you can be honest, I can be too. And there's something so attractive about that depth of honesty. It relieves self and other. It relieves self and other from having to put up airs and guards and defenses and masks and ego and pride to sort of protect this thing we all know we have inside of us, right? Which really, at the end of the day, goes back to that thing of knowing what you don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm just guessing here. We're all just guessing here, and that goes outside of this program of recovery, just life in general. Like we're all just doing the best we can or trying to figure it out. Life's not easy and it's always changing in every scale. And these are concentric rings of reality that we live in. So the easiest way to do it is just one day at a time within self, because this is manageable and you can do it. And that's where change begins, so it doesn't need to be a big deal. It's just me. And if I actually try these things and I actually work this program and I actually do these steps, like full heartedly do these steps, work this program, practice these principles in all my affairs, the change happens. It just does. It just does. So that's the biggest thing, is really getting honest about really working this program, and then looking at why you wouldn't, what stops you, what holds you back. So for me, once that penny dropped, and I would say that was about a year into the program for me, that I fully stepped in and I surrendered authentically and abandoned myself to God as I understood him and this program, right? And just let go of any notion of anything. Like I came to it like a child, right? Like just curious. Let go of all of my, what I think I know, all of my beliefs and values, and just walked in as a child, like come as a child to this program, because really that's the truth, isn't it? Isn't it, Milan? We're all just children who've grown old.
Yep.
Yeah.
Phew, man, you sure left a lot of food for thought in those statements there, and that was amazing. I am so grateful that you came on the podcast. From the first moment I met you, I was like, hey, check this out, because I'd love to have you on. And you were like, oh, have my friend on. And I was like, no, I want to have you on. And so I'm glad we're finally here today together, because it means a lot to me. I love the message and messages you share on a constant basis. And, this topic to me was, it was a startling revelation to me once I started doing the step work, that, I was not only lying to everybody else, but that I had set up believable lies for myself.
There it is, the delusion of
Yeah.
self right there.
Yeah, and it was like I had all these resentments for people that I was close to, that I loved, and I was certain that they owed me apologies. And no, like I literally had this vision in my mind, like, man, this step work is going to help me really lock down how I'm right here. Like it was, that's how deluded I was. I'm not kidding. And when I finally got, into my step 4 and started learning how with these tools to look at my part, like I didn't take counseling. I didn't take a ton of psychology or anything like that. And so I didn't have tools to actually see my part. And nor was I actually caring to look. Like I was doing enough bad things that did I really want to see what my part was in my own hellish invention? No way. You know,
There it is, right? Owning
like,
your part, like what's my part?
yeah,
That's huge, Bina.
yeah. And so for me today, that has been a big part of my story, is that, I have a friend, young, shout out to young Gabriel. And we're literally call each other calibration brothers,
Mm.
because when we were early in recovery, we would call each other just to make sure that what we were about to do made sense outside of our own selfish minds.
Mm.
Because at the beginning, neither one of us felt like, after like really like he did a very thorough step work, and then embarked on coda steps right after, and like we were both diving deep, looking at ourselves, and what that revealed was how absolutely deluded we were in our thoughts and our actions, and also in our justifications for them afterwards. And so how did we know you've come far enough to now believe?
Right.
yourself. Like, like that's a pretty big assumption. Well, I've done a little bit, so I could trust myself entirely now. Like that
Right.
just that's a rationalization in itself, right? like, and uh, and so uh, for me and anybody out there, if you have a trusted friend that that you want to create that sort of relationship with, I highly recommend it. And not only that, is that it'll also open up to having conversations about your weaknesses and the things you want to grow on with a trusted friend. Like there's something about like sponsors really probably don't want to hear every single thing that's going on, like in that respect. And nor is that a sponsor's job. Like a sponsor's job is to guide us through the steps. Like if we're talking about what I see, like I think that the job of the sponsor is not to like recalibrate me at every moment, but friends that are willing to have mutual, calibration. It was a great thing for me. Okay, so
100%. I just want to say about that. That's really important. And actually, our program talks about delusion of self, not so much denial. I think that's only mentioned once in the big book, actually, but it really is about that delusion, and having an accountability partner is important, right? We need to check outside of ourselves. And like you were saying, you've got a friend that you do that with. It also, the program tells us to check in with at least two or three other people whenever you're making any kind of decision, and get some feedback, because the other thing that does is it helps to break down the pride and ego, to let something in, chip away at the concrete and rebar around our heart, right? And just let something else in that may be useful. It may be hurtful to the boy inside the man, or the girl inside the woman, right? But what it will allow us for is to grow, because that's what it's about, is willingness to grow along spiritual lines. And then what's my part? Well, when you ask that question, Milan, with another partner, you're able to get that kind of feedback and really have time for self-reflection, because you're not polluted in the mind today like we were before.
yes, absolutely. I love I love that. I always love. You've got a wonderful mind, Trish, and I really appreciate it. I'm not a big fan of mediocre, and you're not. So even in long-term recovery, the most dangerous lies are the ones we still whisper to ourselves. After all these years, where does subtle self-deception still show up in your life, Trish?
Mm, what a really great question. Yeah. I do such depths of self-reflection. It's interesting because I have a friend visiting me right now, and that's something she said to me last night. You're such a deep thinker. So it is a double-edged sword, but I think, like, for me, it's really important to just keep mining away at that. Now, because I'm an addict alcoholic, I take everything to extremes. So, I can mine the other side of that forever and just keep looking for, just ways that I delude myself. And but the other part of that is, so it's about finding that balance. The other part is, well, you know, maybe you're actually doing all right. You are just working one day at a time at looking at these little points of denial, of delusion, of self-deception. So I constantly do an inventory at night about, a reflection of myself and my day. And I think for me, it's just, I I have to really watch my ego and pride and get right sized. Like, for instance, you were part of a meeting about a meeting recently, and
Ooh, was
a lot
I
of
ever?
yeah, and a lot of people were really thankful to me about that. But what I have to do is just, again, all the glory to God, He made me useful today. I was actually useful of purpose for something outside of me, and somebody appreciated it. Therefore, I know I'm doing step 11. I've made conscious contact, and I'm doing His will, right? Because it's helpful to other people, because it's good for others, not me. So the more I look at, how much of you is involved right now? Like, are you trying to get your accolades? Are you trying to get noticed? Are you trying to, like, what really is your motivation, right? About motivations and intentions. And I think for me, that's the line I balance, the beam I try to balance on and figure out, is this for me or is this? And when I live one day at a time in that complete surrender of just, again, it's not thinking less of myself, it's thinking about myself less, doing more for others. The more I practice that, the more I really do feel like, yeah, I feel better about myself. I feel better about others. I feel better about my relationship with my maker, right? And my purpose. And it's nice to be acknowledged because, but the motivation behind it is different today. Like, it's nice to be acknowledged because I am and want to be part of the whole for good, not, spotlight on me, like trying to prove my worth. So I ask that question all the time because that was a big part of my story from childhood, was proving my worth. So you're asking me, where do I still delude myself today? Maybe in small ways where I either consciously or subconsciously am still attempting to prove my worth rather than understanding, because I'm here, I'm worthy, period. That judgment is left to my maker and my maker alone. I am in no position to judge others or myself. So all I can do is the best I can one day at a time and remain self-aware, because those things are going to come up. I'm going to go into those reactions and behaviors. I'm going to take my will back every day in some little way. Of course I am, right? I think that's what makes this program great, is you're never done. It's a lifelong job. Like, you just keep practicing, and then just measuring against self of like, how did you do today? Did you do a little better? And that's all I can do, is just hope to be a little better every day. But for me, at least, I have the self-reflection and the sense of surrender, where I know it has nothing to do with me as a good or bad person and all this sort of judgment around guilt and shame anymore, because that swallowed me whole. Like, I literally couldn't survive and that level of judgment and guilt and shame. It was just too overwhelming. I was never good enough. I would never be good enough. I would never reach that mark. It's just too, it's too overwhelming. So today I just try to be right sized and look at those little things and go, yeah, well, maybe you were looking for a little attention. Are you kind of lonely right now? Or are you kind of like, or like, what was really your motivation behind that? So that's what I do today.
I love that. So after all these years, where does subtle self-deception still show up in my life? There's a lot of places where I feel like subtle self-deception is is apparent. But one of the things that has been a big thing for me this year is I call it the Great Resurrendering of March 2025, and had a podcast guest, and just he said a simple sentence that really kind of was a little bit of a slap in the face for me, where it was, this isn't a program of self-improvement. This is a program of surrender. And I had felt like I kind of plateaued out for a bit. And what I realized is that I was trying to be the one to work on my defects and shortcomings. And I really wasn't surrendering. Like, I was like, hey, why don't we hire Milan, who sucked at this for 52 and a half years? Let's hire him back, Trish. And, like, he's going to be such a great anger remover. You've never seen him do it successfully, but let's hire him because we like him. And so, I feel like even now working on it, there's just still moments in the day where I like catch myself, and it's the phrase, if you're saying, I need to work on this, then you're absolutely not surrendering it. Are you there?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
If you say, I need to work on this, like if you're saying, I need to work on this, it literally means that you are not surrendering it. It means that you think that you are the one, like, it's like,
totally,
we're just not going to look at step 6 and 7
yeah,
because
totally,
I'm
I
really
get it.
good at working on this. And so for myself, I catch myself still. Like, first of all, I had a
Taking
great,
your will back.
Yeah, I had a wonderful surrender for my addiction. Like I've really been lucky. I have not had the desire to drink or use at all. At all. Like I really feel like I know other people who've had it like me, and it's just, like it's not the norm and it's not like a unicorn. But for me, it's been really great because that
Yeah,
struggle has
the
been
obsession was removed.
the obsession was removed, but guess what? My obsession on my anger and on my intolerance and my lack of acceptance, like that was those things I kept trying to plow through under my own will, and it was not working at all. And,
100%.
like, not to say that they were at the same level as they were in my addiction. No, because my whole level of insanity is less than my level of addiction, right? Like, sleepless days can make a grumpier person. Like, let's just be honest, for somebody who was up on drugs for days at a time, right? Like, things, like who I am now is also a product of how I'm treating myself. But, like there's definitely a ton of self-deception that was still occurring around surrendering. And it's just something that I'm really kind of dedicating time to learn how to do better, you
Until
know?
you let go, absolutely.
Yeah, and so a big part of my day and my prayer now is praying gratitudes, even for these struggles, praying gratitude for the love I'm seeing instead of anger in my life, for the lessons that are teaching me to surrender better, like for things that I don't necessarily feel that I have, but I
Which is
do have it, but I
right.
do have in some aspect, right? And so, anyway, for me, it was definitely that self deception was occurring surrounding surrender. Absolutely, and and it'll probably continue to do so in some format. But I'm trying. I'm trying to the best of my ability.
And you've said so many great things there because actually that's actually biblical about gratitude and thankfulness, because when we're deluded and we're polluted in the mind, we delete all the good things. Like, we're so self-centered to the core, it's all about us. We see what we want to see, feel what we want to feel, and we delete all of these other things, right? And this amplifies gratitude and thankfulness. This is as old as man himself. Amplifies, like it's centered in the mind. Our delusion, it's all centered in the mind. So whatever we focus on, we get,
The
right?
sign in the treatment center across from where I sat said, "That which you focus on becomes greater." And that became my mantra. It was like, I am focusing on my recovery, not my addiction. I am not looking back at that. I'm looking forward at who I'm becoming.
100%. Thoughts become things. And this is actually this is neurological. Like, we literally create ruts in the mind, like neurons that fire together wire together. So these are habits and patterns, and we can create good habits or bad habits, but it is all centered in the mind. And that's what the book tells us, this obsession of the mind. So whatever we're thinking about, we are going to create. That's how the world was built. These are thoughts and ideas in the mind, and then they're manifested in reality. So it's not some hokey pokey thing. And the other thing you were talking about was, this just about, what happens to the body. Like, I'm up all night, I'm doing all these things. Well, here's the truth about step one for anyone who drinks, and I don't care how big you are, a 40 pounder of single malt scotch is going to get drunk. It's not, this is a biological thing, right? This is just how this is pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics, like what the body does to a drug and what the drug does to a body. It's just the way it is, right? This is what's going to happen. So there's also ways that we can actually change those chemical things in our body. And one would be putting down the bottle, putting down the drug, and learning how to manifest that pharmacy of all those great chemicals on our own. And that's powerful.
Do you know why you black out? It was on Quirks and Quarks a couple of years ago, and I
Oh,
really love. Do
go
you
ahead.
know?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, this is what Bob McDonald said. Is that The very first part of your brain that starts dying from alcohol poisoning is the amygdala. And your
Right.
amygdala is responsible for forming long term memories. So that's why you can be awake and functioning, but not remember the next day. Because you can't form long term memories when your amygdala is dying of alcohol poisoning.
That's exactly right. The brain is incredible. The basal ganglia has a lot to do with it too. But these are, these are real things. Like this is what's going on in our time and spaceship. I call our body our time and spaceship. And the more we learn about it, the better we are. And there are simple ways where we can help ourselves with this obsession of the mind and getting into recovery just by like what we did with Living Sober the other day, the little book Living Sober, which is an underrated, in my view, great book in the program of recovery, is just simple things like getting more rest, like getting routine, getting a nighttime hygiene, like starting to work these habits, where you begin to get not only clarity of mind but of body, like you feel better inside here. And so many people, in fact, I've yet to meet anybody who struggles with addiction that really just felt uncomfortable in their skin. They just wanted to get out of their body, but there they woke up in there every day, right? And I certainly had that experience myself.
I love that. And so now, do you have a question for me? One of your questions?
Right. One of my questions. Well, I think, what delusions of self did you discover through the program of recovery?
Ooh, okay. First of all, delusions of self that I was powerful. Like once I
Like
got to the
you were God.
well, like that I literally spent I was in active addiction or youth or alcoholism or whatever you want to call it. It was a mix for 37 and a half years. But the last 17 and a half years, I would say were I recognized there's something going on and I would try to quit here and there, right? And I still thought I was powerful.
let me
Like I
let me
like
interject there and just say why. Why did you want to quit?
oh, I didn't want to quit. Okay, let's get
And I
straight.
tried to quit a few times.
Like I was stopping because of events that were turning out to be hurtful for other people, or people were mad at me, or like there
You
was
didn't
a
have
lot
the
of
power and control.
uh, pardon.
You didn't have the power and control.
I did not have the ability to yes, exactly. I did not have the power and control. And what was happening was is that once I would get beyond a certain amount of intoxication, I was doing consistently pretty embarrassing things, for what I thought was fine or fun, but there was not for other people.
So there's the crack in the window. Those are the little cracks of light that started to get in, hey?
Yeah, and so, but the thing about, step one is that we admit we're powerless and that our lives have become unmanageable. And so I spent 17 and a half years dishonestly thinking I was powerful. I had that obsession of the mind that my mind could control this, you
Mm.
know? And I think that a lot of people out there might, or at least for myself, right? When people used to speak about like the obsession of the mind to me, right? I thought it meant I was obsessed about the drugs or the alcohol and thought about it all the time. And I was like, no, I don't think about that all the time. Like, not all the time. Maybe when I'm using, yes, it would get into weird states like that after a few days of using. But, the obsession of the mind is the obsession that we can control. Like our mind can control our addiction. And that's even though in the face of us failing umpteenth times, like there's hardly anybody I know who never thought about quitting and then just walked into AA and was like, I think I should quit. Like, most people have a period where they think they can control it.
100%. So that brings me to part one and two of step one,
Yeah.
like A and B. Which was more difficult for you? Was,
Wait. Hold on. This is one of your next question?
well, no, just this just
Oh,
came up with you talking.
okay.
You're kind
Okay.
of
Sorry.
talking about, admitting I was powerless. You're talking
Yeah.
about powerful and powerless, and then
Yep.
about the unmanageability. Like, which came first for you? Was understanding the powerlessness or the unmanageability?
Um, Unmanageability.
And it's funny to me, most people say that. And for me, again, I will say it was the powerless thing because again, I don't care who you are. You drink a 40-pounder of scotch, you're powerless over what that drug is going to do to your body.
Though, for me, what it was leading up to like in my last 6 months, I remember thinking, okay, I'm going away for this conference, like where my heart stopped. I'm like, I'm going away for this conference. I'm going to pick up these substances on Friday, and the conference I was leaving for on Monday, and I'm going to just put them away for the weekend. Boom! I picked them up on Friday. I was awake until I left on Monday, right off the bat. And then in my mind, I was like, okay, well, probably take it easy those first 2 nights and really let loose the last 3 nights. We never stopped the party rolling, boom, 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 like still, like just. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go home and I'll shut the whole party thing down. And if I didn't get taken to the hospital there, that probably wouldn't have happened. Like I was just like in a constant state of thinking I was powerful in some respect. I would make
So,
plans based on it.
so God literally intervened. Tell me a little bit more about what happened to you. Like God, it sounds like shut you down because it sounds like you had like a near death experience. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, I absolutely did. I mean, um, I had been up, like this was, okay, so like I was talking about the Friday before getting things, this was now Thursday night, somewhere after midnight. I went out and I would periodically get hungry, not very often, but occasionally. And the only thing open nearby, near the hotel in downtown Vancouver, gosh, the Fairmont, the only thing that was open within a couple blocks was a fresh sliced pizza. So I went and got some pizza. I came back to the room, and I had like 2 slices of pizza. I offered some to the other people in the room, and I was just like, boom, I'm lying down. And like, I mean, I was done. I had been up maybe 6 days, something, maybe 7, maybe even 8. I'm not even sure exactly. Not sure if there was sleep in there or not. Anyway, it felt like there was like this L-shaped vice on my chest, and it's like I woke up from my sleep feeling like I was getting squeezed there, and like in this, which it must have been like the flow area from that vein or artery or whatever, but whatever was getting blocked, it was just like I could feel everything on the other side of that point and shape was just starved of oxygen. And it was like I was like kind of gasping, and then I got them to call the ambulance, and the ambulance took me to St. Joseph's, and that was just kind of insanity. Like, man, the last place you want to go if you're like, the waiting room there was just like hell. Like the waiting room was absolutely people screaming, people bloody, people injured. Like the first responding workers in that hospital have an unbelievable amount of stress on them. Like I was pretty quiet and whimpery, just trying to breathe, but there was people screaming everywhere there. Like it was a complete madhouse. And anyway, yeah. And so I remember the point of like fading, and there was not a bright light at the end of that tunnel, you know?
Was there a tunnel you went through and it just got darker?
No, it was more like an opening. Like it felt like there was kind of like the shadows of what would be around you, like if you were kind of getting pulled from the room through like a dark opening, and then it was just like immediately silent, like cold as the like I've been in a cryo tank. It was like cryo tank cold. It was just like cold, dark, and silent, with nothing, like with no light,
Like a
no,
black hole.
essentially, yeah. But like a black hole, I would imagine feeling compression, and I didn't feel it pressure. Like I literally felt like there was no pressure, like I just felt kind of suspended,
And then
you
what
know.
happened?
and then I remember kind of like not wanting to be there, like, and just almost like screaming with no sound. And then
Was it scary?
oh yeah, like the scariest thing I've ever been through. Like when people talk about being scared straight, like I think more people would be scared straight if they were awake when they died. Like all these people ODing on the downers and the fentanyls and stuff. Well, they pass out before they get there. That's not the case if you're not on a downer, right?
So
And
what
so
was fear for you? Like how did like if you could describe what the fear of what you felt, what was it? Was it like endlessness, like this was going to go on forever and that's it?
that I was just, it was cold, lonely, and dark. Like there was just nothing. It was like a nothingness, a fear of absolute nothingness. So like it was a fear that at that moment that I was going to cease to exist.
Right.
Like I was not be
But it
joining a
sounds like
spirits world. I was not joining, I was not, like, it wasn't even, like for myself, I feel that, the way that the particles shift in the universe from the decay and the collision of planets and a tree growing and dying and leaves and fish and everything, like I feel like little parts of spirit join and become a new spirit kind of inside myself. That's what I feel like, the recycling of that happens in the universe. And this was not any of that. Like it wasn't even like I was becoming a bunch of little particles. I just felt like, here we go. The light is going to be out and I will be gone.
and yet it sounds like this nothingness was also married to your being conscious of nothingness. So it's not like there's nothing and you forgot to, it was you were very much aware of this sort of eternal place of nothingness, so that you're still there, but
Yeah.
it's existing in nothing. I get it.
Yeah. But it was like the longer my body was without oxygen, like the less I was still there.
Okay.
Like I was fading into that nothingness.
And so what happened after?
And then uh, I'm there and I'm breathing again. Like I went right from that to that revival point.
Back to the pain in your
Back,
chest.
yeah, and then once I'm kind of beating and functional again, they must have put some kind of oxygen or something stronger on me, and it was like, although I was getting less air, it was like more oxygen rich, and I could feel that, like that higher ratio oxygen versus less air, that I was able to get to whatever location that was at least compensating and somehow making me semi-functional until I was stabilizing.
Mm. And so once you came out of that, that was your waking moment of like, okay, I've got to stop all of this.
So then after that, I got revived, and somewhere after the revival point, they like they sedated me, like with like some kind of benzos or something like that, just because I'd been awake for so long. And uh, and then the next morning, I woke up at my friend's daughter's place because she lived downtown, and they didn't want to take me back to the hotel, and they don't let you stay. They don't let you stay at that hospital. Like you have to be totally dead or something. I'm not sure. And I woke up on her couch, not knowing where I was, but the only thing I knew was that it was over. Like I didn't have to. Like I was powerless. That was over. I don't have to do drugs anymore. I don't have to. Like I've lost the fight. So
That was
all
surrender.
that stuff in my head, that is the hamster wheel of getting more, wanting more, like saving more for tomorrow. What do I got to do to get more? All that was gone. Like there was like a massive part of my brain that was just freed up, like
So that was your
completely.
surrender point.
Yeah, right there, for sure. And when I showed up at Options, where shout out to Options, love you, treatment center. When I got there, it was just like they're like, "Oh, that's step one." I'm like, "Awesome." I'm like, "I'm step one. I'm step one." Like I am so step one. Like it was
You got the powerlessness and the unmanageability right away.
Boom, like right there. Now, okay, normally you have to answer your own questions. So can you retrace the questions you've just asked me and you answer them?
Okay, well, I think the only question I asked was what delusions of self did you discover? Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, what were the delusions of self I discovered? Well, I think in my attempt to justify, right? Um, my goodness, again, back to what I said earlier, I really believe that that's what that's about. That's what lying is about, is an attempt to be good, right? Um, and I just started to really have to look at that and get out of my resentments of him, her, this or that. I was raised by alcoholics, right? So I was a feral child. That I think the nicest thing my mother ever said to me was like, well, one of the best compliments I ever received from her was, you pretty much raised yourself. And that made me feel good because it was like, oh, good, that's the way it felt. And so as I started to, because in order for me to do this, I had to have some self-compassion along the way instead of these harsh judgments, because that was what was keeping me in my delusion, right? Was these harsh judgments, which again is all about meaning making, and it only has the meaning I assign to it. So I had to change what this whole process meant. I had to add a little bit of self-compassion and see how I got here, because it certainly wasn't by design. So the little ways I deluded myself was a constant daily reflection of about, again, motivation and intention. And that would usually come down to ultimately in some way, somehow proving my worth. Right.
I love that. Gosh, I just had another question for you, but oh, what I would like to know is, okay, so you were raised by alcoholics. What age did you become an alcoholic? Like, what age did that start at for you?
So interesting that you were talking about delusion of self and blackouts and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until I was sober a couple of years and I went to the North Shore Roundup, and there was a speaker that started to, because I didn't get it. Like, this isn't how I thought about my drinking. But there was a speaker that was talking about an incident when they were young, and suddenly it kind of broke me up. This memory came flooding back to me. And I think I was about 14 or 15. And I was living in this small town, and my bedroom faced the alley. I would have a bootlegger come through the alley and pass me cases of beer through my bedroom window. And my boyfriend and my best friend came over to the house at the time and lifted up my bedspread and pointed under the bed at all these empties and said, if this doesn't change, we're not going to be part of your life anymore.
Ooh.
I completely forgot about that. Like, I had completely compartmentalized that memory until I went and heard this speaker. So evidently, I started drinking at about 14,
And how old were you when you stopped?
41.
41. So you had a good stretch.
I did. Now, having said that, there were lots of times in between where um, I didn't drink to excess, and I did a lot of personal work. And there was
Hmm.
at one point that I used to work with Anthony Robbins. I did a lot of personal work, and then I ended up in the film business, is where I sort of landed before I had my daughter. And the entertainment business is rife
Yeah.
with addiction and
Oh,
use
absolutely.
of substances, alcohol and otherwise. And I think that as I mined the gold of my soul underneath all of that, it always came down to about fitting in and, you know being part of, being liked, like just fitting in somewhere, right? Being accepted and fitting in. And so I took that to excess, and like you were talking about how you felt about your behaviors and this and that, um, and how other people felt, and the impact that I had on others. That's really what was the changing point for me. And frankly, I was I just remember being sick and tired of being sick and tired, from a very young age, and I spent, from my earliest memories, I spent trying to figure out how to make sense out of nonsense, because I saw so much nonsense around me. I couldn't, when you're raised by alcoholics, like the goalposts change. There's absolutely nothing that you can rely on, that you can trust, that you can believe in. There's none of that, right? So you become this sort of insular person, underneath it all, and then you're just become the grand observer, and you're just figuring out how to navigate this crazy, right? And it's exhausting because there is no way to navigate it. Like there is nothing to figure out, because it's
There's
that.
no correct way because
Yeah,
it's
it's chaos.
changing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
constant chaos. So there's no, you know, you're not going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So when you're in that kind of crazy place, right? There is almost this, well, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And okay, I've got another question for you. You ready?
sure.
We don't outgrow dishonesty. We just learn to see it in more refined forms. How has your understanding of self honesty evolved over time?
Mm. I will say that that's a really great question. I will say that the one thing I just love about the program of recovery is the daily food for thought. So this squirrel in a cage mind needs good food for thought. We talk often about like the itty bitty shitty committee, and that's, again, we're talking about those neuronal ruts, right? Like neurons that wire together, right? You have to change that habit of thinking. And for me, that sets me up every day, because there is not a reading that you can't thread throughout your day, because this is a program of surrender and spiritual growth. So it's like, well, how can I apply this to my life today? And because it's one day at a time, it's all manageable, right? So there's always a message that really works, for me to go, okay, so today I'm going to work on this. Again, it's a practice. And what is a practice? It's a lifelong, at any given point, Milan, whatever we're doing or thinking or saying is what we're practicing at that moment, right? So it will always have consequences and feedback. So, and it's impossible to know this whole life, inside and out, from everyone's perspective. It's just not going to happen, right? That's only in the mind of God. So what am I practicing today? And as I'm sitting in, let's say, my feelings of anger or resentment or worry or whatever, it's like, okay, so you're going to practice this. Why don't you consider going into a different room in the mansion of your mind, right? Which is what I consider like the feeling wheel. Like all of those feelings are relevant, but it's like, how long do I go in that room? How long do I stay there? And how quickly do I get myself out and go into another room with another perspective, right? Because I can just as well think about my resentments as I can about the gratitude for and thankfulness for what I have. I'll give you a story, an example. When I came in, I was such a victim of circumstance and so angry. God bless, my first sponsor that was working with me said, just stopped me. And there was two things, actually. One was, Trish, what part of your life are you responsible for? And it kind of threw me off. And she said, I'll give you a hint. All of it, all the time. All of it. And I was like, oh, right, right. Because when we're resentful and we're thinking of him, blaming and, attack and blame him, her, this or that, because I was entirely externally referenced. So questions about like how I felt and stuff were just so overwhelming for me, but also very shameful, because as a grown up, I should be able to answer these questions. The other thing, because when it came to this notion of, like you were talking about gratitude and thankfulness before, it's amazing how that changes your whole perception of your life and everything around you. She said, listen, because I was again a victim. I couldn't get this gratitude thing. She goes, just start with your hands. And I was like, my hands? And she goes, yeah, every time you use your hands, be grateful for them. That was many, many years ago, Milan. And as it turns out, and even as I'm talking to you right now, I use my hands. I use my hands when I sleep. I use my hands when I drive. I use my hands to do everything. My hands are a gift from God. And that's why I call them the hands of God and the mind of man. Anything's possible. So if you're struggling with that, just start with something that simple. And
That's
it's
wonderful.
never left me. It's never left me.
It's funny how like little sentences from people, eh? I
Mhm.
like they echo through your recovery. Like at least they do for me. You know, there's just certain phrases that people said to me at certain points where it forever changes me. You know, or it gives me like, you know, you're saying with your gratitude in your hands, it gives me a reference point for when I'm getting out of whack.
Right. And
Hmm.
then it was such a wider ring of reality for me too, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like everything on this earth that we've built, that we've nurtured, that we've loved, instruments we've played, like the
Mm.
computer I work, it's my hands. Like imagine if we didn't have hands, like
Oh, I love my hands.
hands
I
are
love
incredible.
my
And
hands.
then you start thinking about other, animals and creatures in the kingdom of life. And it's like, yeah, hands is all the difference.
Muy importante. Muy importante. Yeah. Okay, so for me, how does my understanding of how has my understanding of self-honesty evolved over time? You know, first of all, I mean, I think it all always starts with awareness. You know, like I'm much more aware these days of when I'm trying to trick myself for like as a rationalization in a moment. And that like I mean, I had myself and other people what I thought I had other people fooled, but I thought I had everybody fooled, you know, and didn't even know I was fooling myself half the time. And now,
And isn't that the acronym for denial, right?
yeah,
Don't
don't even know
know
I'm
I'm
lying.
or notice I am lying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so now, like, I mean, my understanding of it is that I like, first of all, I don't want to be doing it. I don't want to be lying, and especially, I don't want to be lying to myself. Like, I am trying to, I'm trying to grow inside this program. Like, I really like how you just added this is a program of surrender and spiritual growth, right? But it's like I don't have to be the orchestrator of that growth. I just have to like learn to surrender more, and I'm going to grow just because of that. Do you know
Oh,
what I mean?
oh, 100%, right? Again, in our attempt to be good, right? Our attempt to, because this is what happens when we worship at the foot of any man, woman, or child, when we don't have a power greater than ourselves, which is the only one qualified for judgment, okay, then we end up being judged by others. And here's the truth about man: man is fallen, flawed, failed, sinful, if you wish. That's it. Like we just are. Like no one's Jesus. Okay. So when we have other people judging, like this is why it's so important, right? To not, because even if, and particularly if you worship at a certain person, place, or thing, right? That's going to fail you at some point. It just is. We are flawed, failed, fallen individuals, right? And it's a lot of pressure to put on someone who maybe doesn't have that same kind of courage, right? To stand up and say, I don't know. This is what happens a lot with celebrities because they're worshiped by these people outside of themselves, right? And meanwhile, inside, they know, like, I don't know. This is so much pressure. It's so much pressure, right? So, I think uh, it's that part of the program of a power greater than yourself, something that you can rely on in the spiritual realm, which corrects us. So act as if there is a God, even if you don't believe one, just to keep yourself in check. Like it's a great marker that way. Like in Just for Today, it's a little yellow pamphlet that they hand out. It says, just for today, I will do a good turn and no one will find out. If they do, it won't count. What are the little ways I do that for myself? And sort of leaving it a better place. Like, for instance, if I'm in a public washroom and there's stuff on the floor, or I clean up the sink, I do all kinds of little things like that. And I, again, back to my own pride and ego, I don't want the acknowledgement. I don't want to be figured out. I just want to do God's will, which is just to be good, like just to be a good person.
I need to ask you a question from something you just said a few sentences ago. When you're saying, act like you have a higher power even when you don't,
Right.
how does that play into honesty?
Well, what do you mean?
I mean, that's not acting authentically.
Well, again, to
Like,
me,
I'm just asking.
okay, but
Like, I mean,
I will
we're
answer. I will answer. I look out my window, which I'm looking out right now. Okay, and
yeah.
there's a place God isn't. I know that
Mm,
nature is not a hand of any human being that has anything to do with nature. And if you
yeah.
really don't believe in God, get under the sea, look at the world under the sea and that creation, and know that wow, and plus everything is connected. What nature reflects back to us is love and abundance, right? In this constant abundance of giving and how everything works together. So what it uses it and leaves behind, it propagates for further growth. So again, give good life to good life. And I think that nature is God's way of reflecting that back to us, to just see that. Like, does God not feed the little birds? Like, listen, you cannot make a cherry tree or a peach tree without God's nature. And again, you can call that generation, operation, dissolution, just like the seasons. It generates, it operates, it dies, and then it revolves again, just like the day. However you want to look at it. The bottom line is this is always giving good life to good life. It's all connected and
Mm,
there's nothing that is wasteful. So when you ask about spiritual growth, there's nothing that's wasteful, especially my most challenging people, my most challenging conversations, you know, my most challenging relationships.
but now, I'm I'm not debating higher power or not. That's not what I'm debating. What I was trying to get at was that one statement about, like
Yeah, acting
the
is that.
acting as if, like,
Right.
isn't that
Well,
some
this is
form of dishonesty?
no, no, not at all. Because again, this is coming at it like a child, to suspend all belief that you had before and try something new, right?
Okay.
It isn't about belief, it's about practicing something different. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And if you want to correct your behavior, help yourself. This is one of the ways you can help yourself, right? Act as if there is someone
Mm,
like you. And there is, it's called you. And here's what happens to addicts and alcoholic. They're completely fractured down the middle because of this delusion of self. They've got
mm,
one foot firmly planted in each world and they explode and they're dying inside because they know they're lying.
mm.
So that's who's looking after you, is your higher presence, your conscious. So act as if that you're going to live in accordance with your own values and morals. And when we live outside of our values, this is what we call a contradiction in values, right?
Mhm.
So when you're living in a contradiction of your own personal values, that's where you'll fracture. That's the delusion of self.
Okay. I love that. Uh, are you ready for another question from me?
Sure.
Or is it your turn to ask one? No, you
Yeah,
just said.
yeah, I'll ask you. Was there any apprehension about the depth of honesty required in this program for you?
You know, I would, I don't know if I would say that yes and no. Like, I was willing to dive in whatever depth needed to go for the program, but I still feel that there's times where, like, I still feel that there's times where there's a difference between honesty and being hurtful, and by omission. Like, it's hard. I don't think everybody wants to hear everything all the time. And I think sometimes it's real arrogant to think that we can decide when they should hear hurtful news or not. And and,
Well,
and, and, and I feel like that is that's a tough part still for me, because I spent 51 and a half years being a people pleaser, you know? So it's understanding how to execute that.
that's what the steps are for, like eight,
Yeah,
9, 10, right?
yeah.
Right. Except when to do so would injure them or others.
But I'm not talking about amends. I'm not talking about things that have happened. I'm talking about things that are happening in real time. There's just times where it's like you might have a thought, but you don't necessarily have to share that thought because that could be hurtful to someone else. But then is that a lie by omission, by not sharing your authentic self about something?
But is that authentic? Like, what are you talking about?
I don't know. I'm not sure I want to give a specific example right now. On the
I,
show.
I I think my question on the whole was
Yeah.
more about, the depth of honesty required
Mm,
in this program. And I'll answer that for myself. The
mm,
depth of honesty, yes, there was apprehension when I first got to the rooms. And this is actually also a double-edged sword because I knew also I was home. Like the depth of honesty I heard in the rooms was like, wow, I would have gone to the grave with that one. But here's the truth about being free of self. What you get out of you doesn't live inside you. It doesn't have power over you anymore, right? So, um, oh, just a minute. That was my daughter calling. Sorry. Um, so this depth of honesty for me was like, wow, like you really got to get honest. And it all stemmed back to the many forms of fear we have. It's always about fear. Like, what will this mean? What will this do to us? And more importantly, about like, will this be used as ammunition against me? Because I'm already in this big fight, right? To save our lives, right? We're in a fight to save our soul and our spirit and our lives. And
mm.
so yeah, there was. And that's why the fellowship works so well. Like for me, if someone just passed me a big book and said, off you go, here's all the answers, that wouldn't work for me. It's the
No.
fellowship of the program and the way that this organization, the only one in the world, by the way, that's an upside down triangle. So you think about organizations in the world, and there's always these leaders at the top, and all the minions below. Ours is entirely upside down. It's funny because I have a sticker on my car of, the circle and the triangle. And I've had many people in the program say to me, your sticker's on upside down. And I said, no, it isn't. That's why I belong to this club, because it's the group first. That's what
Mm.
makes Alcoholics Anonymous work. That's why it's 90 years old now, because the people matter, the fellowship matters. And that's where we get the connection, because the antidote to addiction is connection and deep connection. Here's another beautiful thing that was the other side of this honesty, is that I have relationships with people in recovery, sober individuals today, that are deeper than I could ever imagine. I don't know where they live. I don't know what they do for a living. I don't know what they drive. I don't know anything about all that material stuff in the world. But my soul spirit connection with them, the depth of understanding of that person, that soul and spirit in front of me, is absolutely miraculous. And that's what fills me. And until I started to practice that, I didn't understand how that would fill my spirit. So all that darkness and need to escape myself doesn't exist anymore. I do reach out and I connect with people like me, right? We're able to share at this depth of honesty and be, with some levity and brevity about it, right?
Mhm.
And that's all it is. It isn't about fixing, it's about self awareness and self reflection. And because we're not polluted, we have the ability to do that now.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so rigorous honesty isn't a destination, it's a daily practice that deepens as we grow. What areas of your life are now calling for a new level of truth, Trish?
Well, that's interesting. I appreciate that question because I've been thinking a lot about that lately, and I think that would have to come down to like a a personal relationship and partnership with someone because I'm a single person. I'm a single woman. So that's been on my mind a lot about, how that, that's a glaring omission in my life, right? And yet this program's all about relationships. So that's something that I'm really looking at pretty deeply these days.
I love that. Um, what areas of my life are now calling for a new level of truth? So I'm, you know that I'm going to that step working group that's on Tuesdays at noon. And what I want to do this time is I listened to this guy who was saying that, he was an old timer and it was pretty far into his program, I think almost like 20 years or something. And he finally did step four on his beliefs, not just his resentments, but his beliefs, like his own negative self beliefs that were holding him back. And when he was speaking, it really hit home for me that there is a lot of half truths or flat out lies that somebody said to me or I said to myself as a kid that I'm still echoing, that's still limiting my existence.
Mhm.
And so right now it's my beliefs that are calling for a new level of truth to me. And I'm hoping that here over the next 10 weeks, 11 weeks, that I'm going to be addressing that with some step work.
That's awesome. I'm a
Hmm.
big believer in, like, again, this program, you're never done, so it just unfolds in flowers along with generally human nature, which is human stages of development. You get to different ages in your life and it is what it is. So your thoughts, values, beliefs, and environment changes, maybe even the ability to do certain things or even your care, right? Your concept of care, like what becomes important to you as you grow, right? And this applies to everyone. Like this program can apply to everyone. Thank you. And anyway, so I think uh you know as as we work this program, it's important to just reflect on the steps every year. Like today, with the grace of God and my ability to surrender enough to this program and practice these principles in all my affairs, I generally tend to live in step 10, 11, and 12, right? And to me,
Mm.
that's the growing up part. Like 1, 2, 3 is cleaning up, in my view, right?
Mm.
Or giving up, and 4, 5, 6 is cleaning up, 7, 8, 9 is making up, and 10, 11, 12 is growing up, right? Like this is how grown-ups live.
Yeah, I
So
love how you just said that. I need to write that down or listen back to this right there.
anyway, so doing a set of steps, every year, it gets easier and easier because I've corrected so much of my behavior, and I look at life differently because I'm constantly in self-reflection and in communication with a God of my understanding, right? Like I'm always talking to God. I was listening to a speaker the other day and he's like, we people in AA have a different relationship with God than let's say people in the church. I mean, they're all in there, doing their prayers this way and that. And we're like, on the way to Taco Bell having a conversation with God. So it's a different understanding of that higher a direct relationship with that higher power. So I really believe in doing the steps every year because there will be other stuff that comes up. And for me, especially in my first few years of recovery, God doesn't give you what you can't handle. And it was so overwhelming for me, these steps. Like it was so overwhelming for me, and about getting it right and doing it right and getting it all in. And it's like more will be revealed. So just the ones that you remember. And then as time went on and as I continued to work this program, it was like these memories would come in. I'd be like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that. Okay, that's going on the list for this year. I've got to sort that out, right? But it's a beautiful ride with with your fellows. Like,
Mm.
I have a depth of relationship that I didn't realize how much I was lacking, missing, and desiring my whole life, to be able to connect with people at this level. And you want to get in the middle of the boat. We're a sick group of people, right? So, also be mindful and careful about who you choose, to reveal those depths for, because we're all at different stages of recovery, right? But I will say that there is such beauty and power in really connecting to a group in the middle of the boat. Like, for instance, I travel alone as a single woman, and I go to meetings, and I know that their recovery relies on them, put me under their arm and being honest and showing me where to go and where not to go in that particular town. So I get in the middle of the boat and I have a wonderful time wherever I am. And I always learn more about this program, because there's just no end or depth to it. I hear people say, oh, it's the same thing over and over again. Well, that's not my experience at all. At
No,
all.
I love it. Do you have another question for me, or do you
Yeah.
have to go?
Well, let's continue on here. So
Good.
talk about your journey through self-awareness. Like, I talked a little bit about mine. Go ahead. Talk about your journey through self-awareness.
In Okay.
Because I
For me,
think I think, and I'll just put it to you this way, right? I
mm,
think that we're very aware today about self-unaware. And that's modeled to us all around us, right? Whether
mm,
people outside of the program, particularly that we call normies, and also new people, right? You can see the level of self unaware, right? So today, talk about your journey of like being self unaware, this delusion of self, to self awareness.
so I remember going into treatment, and I had my initial conversation with the counselors, and one of them's like, you might be a little bit self-centered. Like, like she did, and I was like, or no, yeah, I think it was selfish, she might have said, and I was like, I'm a very generous person. And I immediately was
And
on the
yet, that's not
defensive.
what she said. She hadn't said
No,
anything about generosity. Isn't that funny?
it was, I was completely living in self. Like everything, all of my satisfaction, all of my actions were about making little baby Milan happy.
Right?
And and you better do your part to make baby Milan happy, because he's done something for you. And that's where, like, none of my generosity was real generosity. You
Right. It
know,
was a hidden bartering system.
it was a hidden bartering system that I was like, come on, Trish, come on. I got this string here, Trish. Come on. I did that for you, Trish. Now it's your turn to do that for me.
Right.
And, and so,
Selfish, not selfless.
yes, exactly. But also self-centered.
Yeah,
Like
because
I
you
was the center, and you better play your part. Like, I remember that reading in the big book there, where they talk about, the actors and the stage, and if you don't really
right.
play your part. And I was like, man, this is me, too much me. Like, I hated it. I hated it. Like, I hated its absolute bang onness for my life at that
Right.
point. I resented it. Had a resentment for lines in the big book before I got to step 4. But
Absolutely. And isn't that the beauty about the big book? Because it shows you there you are in your defect right now.
and so one of the things is that if if it was something that was happening in my favor, right?
Right.
Then there was no morals to it. Like, the lines of morality shifted for me.
Mhm.
Like, lying was okay if if I thought I deserved that sensation with that other person, and that was even though it was dishonest to somebody else. Like, adultery was fine if it was, like, passionate or love or whatever it was. Like, there was lines were always blurred, and there was no principled action. And it was coming through, like, I mean, I have I've listened a lot and read a lot in this program. And I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm saying that I'm not sure everybody who goes to a meeting once or twice a week thinks about it as much as I do, right? Like the actual kind of inner mechanics of the conscious contact and being present in the moment and what's actually causing our dis-ease. And for me,
It was contradiction in your own values.
it
Because if
was
this was
contradiction
happening to
inside.
you, if this was
Like,
being done to you, you would feel differently.
and also though, like I was so there I was like in a land of shame and guilt. Half of me was in the past and the other half was so worried about the future and trying to control it that there was nothing left for the present moment. Like
100%.
I had zero serenity, zero. Like not like, oh, I was serene sometimes. I had zero serenity and I didn't even want to be at serenity. Like I wanted to be like rocket ship. Like
Yeah,
I
because that's
wanted,
where the truth lives, in the moment.
yeah. And so like it was doing the steps. Like for anybody out there who's new and just starting out in the program, they call the steps the program of action because it is the program of action. Like I don't know how somebody can not do the steps, like and then expect any relief, because all of my relief and change in my life has happened because as a direct result of doing those steps and learning more about how to apply them from people further along in the program, from listening to speaker tapes, from reading things, from doing podcasts like this. Like every time I talk recovery with someone, there's some little snippet that helps me, that goes into my library of like, okay, that's how you act, or that's how you do this, or whatever it is, And I feel like for myself, I'm on a constant quest for more information in this journey. And there's no lack of information in this world about this program. Like there's tons. Like, I mean, I'm so excited to go to this conference this week. Like, I'm just like, wow, when am I ever going to sleep if I want to see all these things? Because there's stuff 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
And, but, right now, the biggest journey for me is involving surrender. That is like the biggest part of my journey and my program right now is for, for my uh, gaining of serenity and peace and joy in my life. It's surrounding surrender. I'm not talking the shit of surrender and then not doing it, like getting myself to have those hard moments where I have to let go, or I'm just talking.
Well, life's a gift. That's why they call it the present.
That's
That's
right.
why this is a 1 day at a time program. It's
That's right.
literally 1 second, 1 minute, 1 day at a time. On my first cake, I brought a clock and I taped I actually bought a clock and I glued on all of my chips from 1 to 11 on that clock. So I'd always know what time it is. It's 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. That's it. And that's where the truth lives. And that's where the presence is. And you're right about the past and the future. I mean, that's where we are as addicts and alcoholics. We cannot be present with ourselves. And so, the past is always depression, anxiety is always the future. So
Mhm.
we vacillate between these two places. And really, when you let go of those two places, like there's this great reading for those listening called Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Like any man can fight a battle for 1 day. Therefore, let's just live 1 day at a time. If you read that little piece, it brings all of what we've been talking about together, which is a manageable, right size, bite size way of living, where it's this is the only moment we have. Milan is the one right now, now, now. That's it. That's the only place we can affect change. So when we're living in the past or future, we're literally driving ourselves crazy.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm.
Would you like another question from me,
Well,
or do you have to go?
No, that's okay. How do you make meaning of your life today? You know, and then how does that compare to your life prior to recovery? It really is a lot about meaning and purpose today, and I'm sure it's much, much different.
So one of my friends says this, and I wrote a song about it. I love it. He said, the meaning of life is to give life meaning.
There you go.
And I like that saying a lot, because my moments mostly weren't even remembered, let alone contain meaning before, right? And I now
Mm.
try to approach my life with a sense of service. Like I genuinely do help out when I can help out, but I also seek to help out. Like I'm not just like, if it ever turns up that I have a chance to help, I want to help out. I want to help out, and I also see, like, I can see now with the program the things that I need to surrender in order to gain more serenity, more peace, more joy in my life. And and just having that awareness kind of gives me a goal of, like, just to deepen my commitment into the program. Like, I think some people lose willingness as they go along in the program, and things kind of, they get complacent. And right now, for me, I feel more committed to the program than I've ever felt, because am continually having conversations like this that inspire me, having, sponsees that are inspiring me, being part of groups that inspire me. Like, I joined the group that we're in together, the meeting that we're in together. Let me correct that. But the meeting that we're in together, because I was hearing things that inspire me. It wasn't just the couches. The couches had their own comfort draw, but I was hearing things there that I enjoyed, that were inspiring to me. There,
Mm.
there, there's quite a good message in that room when the people there are sharing from their hearts.
There it is. And that's the biggest journey of this entire program, going from our head to our heart. And most
Hmm.
of us, whether we admit it or not, had a heart packed with concrete and rebar. I mean, that's what my journey has been, is chipping away at the concrete and rebar around my heart to find a place of safety and comfort. I don't know the exact the line, but in a book called Language of the Heart, again, an underrated book in this in Alcoholics Anonymous, um, it talks about being able to stand naked in every form, right? Well, yeah, spiritually, in front of in front of in front of someone else and your maker, um, and feel a sense of safety, like a safe spot to land, and to be free of fear. What you were talking about, and I'll just sort of answer that question myself. This notion of service that you were talking about, and selfless motives. So it's about the intention today has changed, right? So it isn't about proving my worth or being recognized or acknowledged or validated, or all of that, because I've turned that over in step 3 to my maker, right? So that's where all of that comes from today. I don't seek recognition, um, even though I may delude myself that that's what I'm doing. Again, that's why I do my little check at the end of the day. Was that what you were doing? Were you looking for recognition, validation, all of those things, right? And acknowledgement, right? So, because today this is about just doing God's will. The only prayer in those steps is to understand God's will for us. What will he do? What would you do, right? And the power to carry that out, completely selfless. But here's the thing: giving is actually gaining. And we come from such a place of fear and loss, right? So it's like, if I give this, what am I going to lose? But really, fear of loss is equals the fear of gain. Because how do you know, right? Like, maybe, and when we practice these principles and we just give freely, right? Without thought of recompense, the gain we get can only be understood by surrendering to that process. Like, again, come as a child, like just out of full curiosity. I'm just going to practice this and see what I gain. And that's the spiritual growth, right? That's really the gift, right? So, and it doesn't matter about him, her, this or that, giving you those acknowledgments or recognitions or validations outside of yourself. It's what happens within. This is the alchemical change of the heart, right? Where you're like, wow, I just gave that to myself. And it's better because of that little pamphlet I was telling about just for today. If anyone finds out, it doesn't count. It's like, it's even better when you're just doing good and being good, right? And doing God's will without thought of recompense. It's like, wow, you only know that when you step into it and try it. And that's what fills me today in a way I could only know by doing it. That's why it's an inside job, to self, for self, by self. And you've got everything you need. The kingdom of heaven really is within. You've got everything you need to do this. Just give yourself the opportunity to try it, like you say, full-heartedly, right, Milan? Like to like really from the heart, just do this. And then and now you'll reap the benefits. So we have a million forms of fear. We talk about fear a lot in the program of recovery, right? But the truth is until we let go of that, of what we're going to lose, we come from such a place of fear and scarcity, right? When we step into that place of love and abundance, right? And just believe, and there's no end to that fuel. Like you are fueled by a spirit that you can only know by traveling that road, right? The road of happy destiny, which is just because between yourself and your maker and your higher presence, right? Like that little holy trinity, like between your own spirit, yourself, and it's like, I know I'm doing good. Like we come from a place of lying and deception and just, all this stuff. And it's like, here's an example of this in the real world, manifestation of this in the real world for me today. Here's the miracle of recovery for me today. Okay. I live in Osoyoos on the east side. There's a bridge that you have to go over. This is where they love to do traffic stops because there's nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Okay. So I'm in a lineup. Excited is the first miracle. There's the guy, there's the cop stopping people, right? Asking them when they had their last drink, checking for sobriety, right? I'm getting closer and closer. And the miracle of this boozer is I'm getting more and more excited. I can't wait for them to ask the question because it's always, when did you have your last drink? Right. And here's the other thing that happened to me. So just before me on this last trip, they stop someone, they pull them over, they wave me through. And I'm upset that they waved me through. And I didn't get a chance, right, to have this conversation today. And it isn't about that recognition. It's just that I feel good about myself today. And those things don't scare me today, right? I am happy, joyous, and free to say, absolutely not, officer. I haven't had a drink and, whatever. So here's how this program works miraculously. And that's, this is the alchemical change of the heart, is what I'm saying.
I love that. I just want to touch, you were talking about fear there. And, I really have a strong belief that you either believe in scarcity or abundance. And, when you believe in scarcity, you've let fear win. Like fear is now controlling your actions. And when you believe in abundance, there's more than enough for everybody.
There you go.
And it completely changes how everything is there for everybody in the world.
Yeah, you know what? You've just nailed it, right? That's really what it comes down to. Is when we come from a place of scarcity, it blocks the sunlight of the spirit. And again, this is how I reflect out in nature, right? It's just the love and abundance that's everywhere. I mean, can you imagine if nature kept resentments like people? Like, you know what? You treated me like crap and I'm not blooming this year. Like, that's it.
You cut my friend down last year, so I'm not making fruit this year.
exactly. Like I'm not doing, no, there'll be no spring, there'll be no summer. No, I'm just proper resentment. Like it knows who and what it is, and it just blooms.
Yeah.
So
Well,
this is what it means to give selflessly, right? Because they
mhm.
know it, nature knows it's beautiful. It just gives freely. And that's why we say in the program, give freely of what you've learned here, right? And share
Mhm.
it with others. Like just if when we change that mindset of scarcity, right? Like love and abundance to or fear and scarcity to love and abundance, it changes everything. It changes everything. So we have
Absolutely.
to change ourselves. We come in here thinking him, her, this or that, because we're always entirely externally referenced. Like our whole lives are just in reaction to what's around us, right? Like that was part of my problem, especially growing up with alcoholics. When you're a people pleaser, when you're just trying to keep that level balance, right? You're just watching the water, right? You're just observing, like when the rug's going to be like, who needs what to be happy. So to ask that question about like what do you need, how are you feeling, that's part of coda too, of codependency. There's a great joke in codependency. Good morning, how am I?
Yeah.
I it's
No.
like, that's how lost we are of self. And to gain self back and actually to be sitting in here, minus, sans all of those other voices and impacts and impressions that have been stamped and written all over us, to actually find out who we are underneath all that and be okay with that. I mean, that's really the gift. And that was my last question. What's the biggest gift you've learned in recovery or you've received in recovery?
Whoa, the biggest gift I've received in recovery is freedom. Like
Love it. Love it.
freedom, like not just from addiction, but freedom from self, and
Love
I still have a ton of direction to go, but I have glimmers of freedom and serenity that are more than enough to feed my soul, for sure.
it.
I feel really lucky. And what about you?
Well, that would be it too. It's a freedom that I could only know from surrendering to this program, turning my will over, and practicing these principles in all my affairs daily, one day at a time. Like I can't live in the future. I would have never got sober if it was in my head I'm never going to drink again. Like I just that couldn't work for me.
Mm.
So the freedom I have today in knowing who and what I am, knowing what I did and said, knowing
Mm.
where I'm going, being able to be present with self and other and a maker of my understanding, right? And to be comfortable in my own skin and know that it's okay. This isn't about, again, we say this and how it works. It's practice. We are not saints. The goal is to grow along spiritual lines. It's practice, not perfection. And any practice of anything is just a daily habit. That's it. It's
Mm.
really that simple. And so my daily habits today have brought me a freedom that I only know from practicing them.
I love that. That's wonderful. Well, Trish, I'm really grateful that you came on. I would love to have you on again sometime.
I would
I,
love that, Milan.
I think that we have some fun talking recovery. Um,
100%. And I just want to end with this. Page
yeah,
68 of the
yeah,
big book states,
yep.
the verdict of the ages is that all men of courage have faith. They trust their God. We do not apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. And so, thank you for this podcast. Thank you for your demonstration and working with your fellows. This is really great work you're doing. I want to see more of this because guess what? Recovery is getting back in vogue, especially with all kinds
Ooh,
of celebrities and stuff. I mean, sobriety's in, it's just, it's hip today to be sober.
I got recovery fever. I'm burning up. Ooh. I love it. Okay, everybody out there, tune in next episode for more recovery fun. Bye-bye, everybody. I love you. Please help us help others. If you've liked what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.